Hello, Callum. Thank you for joining us, and we're really looking forward to talking to you. You've got a very interesting story that has effectively changed the course of direction, well, the direction of your life. So, would you be able to start off the story and say why it was that plant-based or vegan became an issue for you, or became something of interest for you?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Of course. So I think like throughout my life, it was I was you know wasn't taught well about like the usual nutrition. Obviously, I think everybody in every school is taught exactly the same nutrition, which is obviously like the protein, the fat, and the carbs. That's all you need. They don't go into anything else. So that already sets you up for really bad habits. That sets you up for the worst habits possible because they don't teach you properly. So it kind of always stemmed from there. Like when I was a child, I wasn't very unhealthy. I had a very nutritious diet, I would say, apart from obviously the meat side of things, because obviously I was on that very meat journey. And it's when I started going to secondary school. A lot of the food there, you have no one to kind of supervise you on what you're eating and stuff, and you start buying like burgers because it's not nutritious food at schools. As much as they make out it is, it's not. It's like burgers. There's like these fried chicken things, from what I can remember, and back then I had a very fast metabolism, that kind of thing. It didn't really affect my body. And then it's when I started going to college. I carried on those bad habits going on, and started to kind of. It wasn't just obviously food. When you start college, you then find alcohol. So mixing those two together is kind of just a recipe for like disaster. It's like party and party every week, eating unhealthily, kind of like the hangover food. Oh, let's go get like a something that's really greasy, like a fry up or something like that, and then it kind of grows out of control and it starts spiraling because you're drinking, then you're eating, then you're drinking, then you're eating, then all of a sudden it gets into just a giant spiral. And at that point, this was during college, I decided to go vegetarian. And I think this is everybody's kind of. I think a lot of people's journeys are going vegetarian at first. They're like, oh, it's a quick way to lose weight. Where it isn't, but you're like, oh yeah, there's these. But back then there wasn't many options, so it's basically, it's what this is going on 10 years ago now. Wait, college 2008. I started. Yeah, so it's about 12 years ago, and yeah, no. So I started like eating vegetarian. Back then, it wasn't any kind of options that I knew of because I didn't understand nutrition back then. So it's kind of like I didn't realize like lentils could make a bolognese or something like that. I was kind of like, oh, let's just get like the alternatives and supplements and the alternative foods, much like the corn, because it was really only corn and Linda McCartney back then. I started eating those, and back then they weren't very good. They've grown ever since then. And it kind of just I think I may have been vegetarian for about vegetarian because I did dabble back into the meat side of things for about a year and then kind of just gave it up. And then by this time I'd finished college. Then I was still hanging around with a lot of the people that I was beforehand, which was still going to parties, still eating a lot, still drinking, and my weight just fluctuated out of control. And yeah, so I basically that kind of happened. Then I decided to go kind of get into a healthy routine. And a healthy routine, I think, for anybody when they go to the gym, because I was like, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to get my fitness, going to do that. I'm going to cut out all kind of processed foods. And it's such a loosely worded term, processed foods, now, because so many things in shops obviously claim they're fresh, like natural ingredients. They're not, especially like the meat things. So I was on this kind of fitness journey where I think when people go to the gym, it's kind of you eat your chicken, you eat your rice, and you eat a bit of veg, and that's nutritiously sound, apparently. Which really, you're not feeding anything apart from you're just obviously feeding your body a lot of different kind of toxins, cholesterol, all that kind of thing. And kind of got into a slight bit of shape. I got like muscly because I then decided I was going to go abroad and work, which was great. I like, and I was like, so I'm going to get into shape for this because, you know, can't, like hot boy summer. Like decided that I had to get into shape because obviously like you're going to be around a lot. It's a very toxic atmosphere. It's kind of a lot of very kind of big muscly guys and very, you know, all that kind of thing. So I wanted to feel like I would fit in as such. So I went to go work abroad, and if I thought I was unhealthy back then, being unhealthy there is a whole different realm because I was kind of at first I was going to restaurants and getting like veg and food, like, but all the veg kind of came with your meal, and I was craving that. But then it spiraled where you'd be drinking nonstop. That's all you're doing all day. So obviously that was I wasn't eating, and when I was eating, it'd be something like a kebab or something like that. And I was literally it kind of got into this hole or this pit of just kind of the time I was awake, which wasn't very much at the time, was either drinking, so kind of verging on the kind of alcoholism, I would say, to the point where it was kind of, if I stopped, then it was a kind of withdrawal where I was there. So it was just kind of carrying on. And then obviously just eating what was kind of like just not so much dirty food. I went to restaurants, but it wasn't the most nutritious food. It was a lot of if you've ever been to Greece, it's a lot of beef and lamb kind of. So it was a lot of very rich kind of ingredients that didn't bode well with my body. Instead, kind of made me feel bloated and disgusting. But that I think that was basically a mixture of both these things put together. That was alcohol, that was food, and then so that carried on. And this was what, 6 months of my life nonstop. Like this was 6 months every day, like carrying on. And I didn't feel like there was anything wrong with that at the time. I was just kind of like, oh yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm gonna be great and that. But it's when I got home, like I left, went home. I was like, oh god, like look at the state of me as such. I'd obviously, well, for one, my liver must have taken a hit, with but also what I was eating, because it wasn't overly true. I don't like the things that I could have done to my body. So, you know, like your rise in cholesterol, your rise in just body fat in general, and obviously everything else that comes with eating a very meaty diet. And so I got home. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna sort this out again. Gonna be like I'm gonna stop drinking. That didn't happen. It just carried on because it became a norm. It wasn't as much as wet there because obviously I was getting that for free. That was free alcohol. Whereas back in England, we know it's expensive. It's not. I wouldn't say it's expensive, but it's not free. And it kind of carried on down that route, and as well as much as health kind of went, I still wasn't overly aware of nutrients. In my head, the only things you really needed were you also fall into those kind of fad diets. So kind of being like, oh, you don't need carbs. You do need carbs, but it's kind of you fall into fad diets being like, oh, maybe I just eat protein, and that's basically it. So I'll just eat some kind of like, you know, chicken. I'll eat some broccoli. I'll eat some rice, and that will be me. That will be me done. And my breakfast would be kind of very much the same. It'd be like an egg or an omelette or something like that, and it just kind of got out of control. And then I thought I was getting myself back into shape, but I then enjoyed what I was doing too much, was that whole streaming on the alcohol, and just kind of streamlined that being my life. So that was going to clubs every night back here in England before. Like I was like, let's just kind of do this, let's like this. To be fair, I was kind of like on that thing, you only live once kind of thing. And kind of like just not caring about my health in general. So that obviously the drinking led me to then binge eating, because hangover cure, let's have a pizza, and that kind of thing. And my weight fluctuated, but you don't see it. You really don't see it until it gets to the very end. And then you're like, oh, you look back at a picture of yourself, being like, that's not me, or that must be a bad angle. And you're telling yourself that's just a bad angle. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'll be fine. Like, I could probably lose that in 2 weeks, that kind of thing. And it was very a toxic mindset I had, because I was kind of like, as long as I obviously just eat healthy, go to a gym like once a week or whatever, then I'll be absolutely fine. And it just got out of control. And I think the turning point for me was I went to Budapest with my friends, and this is maybe going on 5 years ago, 6 years ago maybe. And there's one picture of me, and just kind of like to the side turning, and I had this belly out here, and I was like, oh, that's me. So I was like, you know what, when I get home from this holiday, like, I'm just going to enjoy the rest of this holiday. Like, I'm not going to feel bad about it, because I'm here for 3 days. Might as well not wallow in my own pity. I'm going to get home and do something about it. So when I got home, I was kind of researching at the same time. It's kind of like, but at this point I'd made that connection with animals and that, because my friend that I was out there, well, I always knew, but I always pushed it to the back of my head.
Right.
Like, that's the reason I went to vegetarianism in the first place. But due to not knowing about things, it just went back on itself. But I had the connection, but just kind of pushed it, because I was like, if I don't know about it or I don't think about it, it's not there. So that was my main reason for doing it in the first place. Plus, when I was younger, I watched a lot of those kind of videos from like PETA and stuff, you know, where you kind of see like the baby chicks coming out and then put into a grinder. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. But you push that to the back of your mind, and you're like, oh, like if I just don't know it's happening, I don't care. But something, I don't know what resonated with me at that time. My friend at the same time was also, he just cut out meat once in a while. He'd kind of just, it was more, he may have had eggs and dairy, all that kind of stuff, but cut out meat. And he was going down that route anyway, of just trying to cut things out and going on a more vegan and sustainable lifestyle. And that's who I went to Budapest with. So I was eating a lot of the vegan foods while I was over there. And I've never been against any of those kind of foods as such. There's many people that have been like, oh, why would you want to eat that? I was very open-minded. I like to try new things. I used to travel around the world trying new things. I went to Thailand, and you try like the different cuisines. It's not an issue for me. It doesn't bother me. Trying all these new things. And so yeah, when I got home, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go back to vegetarian. Because at this point, I think every vegan says, I can never become vegan at one point. They're always like, no, I can never do that. And here we are. So that wasn't on the radar at that point. So I went vegetarian. Oh, no, I'd say I went pescatarian for about 5 months, but I wasn't a massive eater of fish in the first place. So it didn't really, there wasn't really any kind of need for it. So when I cut out that, it was just dairy. Finally, I became lactose intolerant, so I cut that one out. So I don't know what, when I went to the doctor, they were like, we don't know how it happens. It can come all of a sudden, just like hay fever. I was like, well, this helps me a lot. So at this point, I was vegetarian. I was like, well, the only thing I'm really cutting out now is eggs, and that's not a massive thing to give up at all. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'll give that up. But still was very unhealthy, because I was kind of like, oh, there's all these alternatives out there. So I can go get myself a burger if I want one, but it's no healthier. So my weight was fluctuating. It's still like, I was at this point, I was on the verge of a plant-based journey or a vegan journey, however you want to say it. but I was still very unhealthy. Still drinking a lot as well. That hadn't stopped. So I decided to go do some courses on nutrition. And that was quite a few. I spent hours and hours and hours every single day, literally just focusing. And that at that time it was for my own health more than anything else. I at this point I wasn't caring about other people's health. So I just wanted to sort mine out. Because obviously I think when you go on a plant-based diet, or a vegan diet, you either go one way or the other. You go towards alternatives, or you go towards whole foods. And I didn't want the alternatives. I knew at the same time they were very much a processed food still. Like, to be fair, if I kept eating that, am I better than would it, apart from the animal cruelty side of it, would I be I'd or like and have, like, the potential for like heart disease and cholesterol was not there, but are you still feeding disease? And in essence you are. And I didn't want that. So I was like, if I want to be the healthiest version of myself, I need to actually plow down, work, see what works for me, what works, and try out new foods and stuff that I wouldn't have ever like tried before. Things like lentils, like I didn't even realize lentils really existed until about 4 years ago. There's a lot of these foods that I'm just kind of like, oh wow, like how have I missed these my whole entire life? Why did I not have them in schools, for one? Mental. Like why is it that it has to be all this meat stuff? Why can't you do a lentil bolognese and just serve that at school? It's a lot more nutritious. But then so kind of carried on this nutrition thing for my own progress. And in that nutrition time, I lost so much weight. Like you don't really like, and the thing is, like, and I think, Graham, you probably were the same as well, because I heard your story, and you feel like you've been feeling great your whole entire life because you think that's normal, because it's just a normal thing. And then all of a sudden you start feeding your body with nutrients, you start with vitamins, minerals, all the things it needs, and you're like, oh, I actually feel great now. What I had before was a facade of just overseeing, like, the last, like, let's say for me, like 18 years. I was like, I've just been feeling what I thought was normal. I thought I was great, but it wasn't. It's just got a very dreary version of myself that's just become the norm. And then started to feed all these nutritious things. I don't want to go back to that. I feel incredible now. Like, especially when you're feeding the exact things your body. It's kind of like, the only way I would describe it is if you own a car. If you don't service it and MOT it, it starts to break bit by bit. So if you're not tipping it with oil or like brake fluid or stuff like that, slowly it will deteriorate. It will still run, but it won't be as good as possible. But if you keep those things up, like, let's say you're doing like once a month, obviously a car and humans slightly different. But if you were to do that to like a car, like once a month, like check everything, make sure everything's fine, it's always going to run to the best of its ability. And some of them can, so you see some of these cars, they're going strong like 40 years. Whereas if you don't do that to your body, you can go strong for a long time. But if you feed it the wrong stuff, like, let's say, for instance, like I wake up, I eat like something kind of like, like a burrito. Like, back in the day, it was like a very like meaty burrito kind of thing, and then at lunch it'd be kind of anything really. It was kind of like maybe a pizza with some cookies, and then in the evening it'd just be anything, just kind of anything. But it wasn't a nutritious thing. And then I just felt bloated, disgusting. And I haven't felt like that. I haven't once felt bloated and disgusting since going plant-based at all. Like, I can feed myself as much as I want. Like, if I want to overindulge on something, let's say like it was a chili or something, I can overindulge in that and I don't feel crap afterwards. In fact, I feel amazing. In fact, it just feeds me more energy. Like, I'm just plowing more energy through myself. And since then, since going on that plant-based journey and learning about those nutrients and stuff, I have been the fittest I've ever been in my life. Like beforehand, I was struggling to run a 5K. I started doing those park runs. Struggled to do a 5K on a meat diet. I switched over to plant, and this is in a matter of weeks. And I was not a physical person, but basically cut out that meat, couldn't do a 5K. And I made this very much Mexican meal, which was like a mashed sweet potato, refried beans, black beans, lentils, spinach, and all that kind of thing, all the nutrients you need. I've never had so much energy. Went out for a run, I was like Forrest Gump. I did not stop. Literally, I did 17K. I'd never done 5.
Oh wow!
And I was like,
Callum, we're in our kitchen now. Do you want to come over and cook us that? Because that sounds really nice.
Like that,
This is
I will happily come.
This is in honor of
when
you.
lockdown's over, I will happily come over.
Do, yeah.
This is in honor of you. We thought we'd put a few whole foods out on our kitchen. The kitchen is our most important room for us, but you know our story as well.
And we know that it's important for you, and now also for the people you work with. So how did that come about?
So that was basically from the nutrition side. I was like, oh, I've helped myself. Like it's great. Like I didn't really think much of it. And obviously this was also helping my family. So like, especially over like the lockdown as such, I was like, you know what, we're all going on a health kick. Because I think everybody starts making that kind of, especially in the last year, made that kind of, they just resonated with the fact they weren't unhealthy, they were being a bit unhealthy, and they wanted. That was the one time they're gonna get into shape properly. Not even shape, just kind of take control of their bodies without having to go, let's say, commute to London and be on that commuting lifestyle of just kind of getting there, picking up like a chocolate bar and a coffee and just wandering to work and then having some takeout. Everybody had control, but you don't have a choice. You were locked in your kitchen, and your choice was you either sit there eating as you were before, and because you can't exercise or you can't do anything, you're going to put yourself in a very deep hole of it's just a deep hole, and it can spiral out of control, and you can have a lot of health issues from just sitting indoors like that. Like that's without the nutrition side. So I was like, you can either feed that as well, and it's gonna get worse for you. And to be fair, some people do that, and like it's completely their choice to do that. But for me, I was kind of like, you know what, like why we're in here, as I was in lockdown with my mum and sister, I was like, you know what, we're gonna get healthy. So I started helping those out first. I was like, you know what, like I have the qualifications now. I'm just not doing anything with them. And it was more spending the lockdown just creating a business as such, but creating one that was completely sustainable and completely whole foods, to help people out the most, to the best possible. Because at this time, everybody was in the same situation. So this started off with then just testing things with my friends, so sending them recipes, seeing how they felt afterwards. Because I wasn't just going to like, you know, recipes you just find on the internet. It could be anything. Like I want to make sure something works for you or your body. So kind of like, obviously, like as we like with a plant-based diet or a whole foods plant-based diet, it's all about calorie density. So if you eat a portion that you're normally eating, sometimes you can still feel a bit fatigued, but you just haven't eaten enough. Yeah. So it was just testing out on some of my closest friends these recipes, being like, look, go make this and tell me how you feel afterwards. So they go up, they make it, and it was either they still feel a bit like drained, or it was kind of, I am full of energy, or I just feel good, or I just feel that. And then that was kind of that worked. But I was like, the ones where you didn't feel like you still feel a bit fatigued, go eat a second portion of it and tell me how you feel. And it's kind of like that. And then that worked out like an actual portion size. This is kind of like, it just looked like a portion size, but like that. So it's kind of creating these. And so these recipes were very much just bespokely made for the person who I was talking with at the time. So if one person liked chickpeas, one of my friends didn't, I give them a recipe that's not chickpeas and stuff like that. And just seeing how those different things work, because all of a sudden, like, you can throw in a sweet potato. For me, sweet potato gives me literally just stupid amounts of energy, but for my friend, it might not. It's just how our bodies take it in. Whereas that energy could come from, let's say, the carbohydrates of lentils, and it's just seeing how those different things work for people. So then that kind of worked out a kind of plan for me that I need to work with what I know what's the best for me. So at the moment it's kind of like helping family with like or myself with weight loss. I knew I could do the weight loss, but I also don't want to do that weight loss where it seems like a 1,200 calorie diet, because that's ridiculous. I hate it, and it winds me up every time I see it on Instagram. I throw so many digs on that every day online. So once you kind of so I was like, I can do myself with a weight loss, but it has to be. I don't want to be doing those quick fixes, because that's not how it works. It's not sustainable, and you will fall back into bad habits. You need to change someone's mindset. You need to create, obviously change somebody's creative thoughts. You need to just change that whole complete mindset, and they need somebody that's invested in them. And for me, I've never had somebody that was invested in my health. So I want, like, so basically when I do have a client as such, I'm invested personally in helping them achieve their goal to the best way possible. So if something doesn't work for them, then we're going to throw that meal away. We're going to try something else. And we're not here looking for a quick fix. If you want a quick fix, go look somewhere else. Because that's not me. Because there's no such thing as a quick fix. You can take your pill or you can take your kind of juice plus, or you can do your keto diet or whatever, and yeah, you'll lose weight, but it won't be sustainable. So I was like, I'm going to do it the way I've done it and just tailor it to my audience. Nice. The same with but just one of my friends, he is a he was working out at the time. He was trying to get to the biggest possible, so he was on a very athletic plan. So I was sending him an athletic what I thought would work for an athlete, and they did. He was smashing out these kind of workouts, these runs, endurance running, and that. So I was like, this works for this. And then also somebody was like trying to like bodybuild and stuff like that. So this is how my plans came to be. So I was like, I'm not gonna create plans that won't work for people. I want it to work, and I want to see that it's worked for someone. So if it hasn't worked, then how am I gonna promote something?
So it's not a one size fits all. It's basically tailored to each individual, which I think is very, very compelling. I mean, I'm completely on board with what you've been talking about. It to me, it's very familiar to me, and it's something that's worked for me. And I think what you've discussed has been absolutely enthralling, and it just proves that it is possible to change. And if you can actually improve your health through those changes, why wouldn't you want to do that? So I think
exactly,
absolutely. So how can people get in touch with you, Callum, in terms of your business? What's your website? What social media is best?
So my website is www.yumfood.life. And that has it's one of those things, but even when someone asks me, I'm just like, I have to think about it, because it's such an obscure name that
it works. It sticks.
It does stick. I decided to use Yumfood because I was like, if I just have my normal name like Callum Nutrition, nobody's gonna remember like that. So I was like, we're gonna smack out something weird there. So yumfood.life, and that has all the kind of like nutrition plans on there, which will I think we have a transition plan that's just for people looking to come off an omnivorous diet to a whole foods plant-based diet, and that's kind of skipping the processed stuff. Like obviously those things are great for somebody moving over and want to do on a slow transition, but I don't work with those because it's what am I promoting? I'm promoting something that's not the healthiest, when I'm going to be a health obviously a health coach. And then that's that transition. Then there's weight loss, there's athlete program, and there's a bodybuilder program. There used to be a pregnancy plan. There's not anymore. Mainly because I was working with somebody else on that who was in obviously it was a pediatrician kind of person, because at the same time I'm never going to have kids, so I can't tell someone how someone's going to feel, so I can't do that on my own. because that I feel like for a guy doing that, I'm just gonna be like, oh, you're gonna be pregnant, you should eat this, like, yeah, or, like it's not gonna work because I'm never gonna go through it. And then my so we can't completely scrap that one because it's just it's not worth it. There's too much going on. There's too much crossover. And then where else can you find me? I am on
Instagram. Your Instagram page.
This is where I do.
She's a big fan of your Instagram page. It makes us smile.
It really does.
Well, makes us laugh out loud,
actually. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, my Instagram is that's my main, that's where I am mainly, and that's where I have the most fun.
And what's your Instagram link?
And that is yumfood.life.
Okay.
Also. Yeah, that's where I have most of my fun, because that's where I can, so obviously having a website is great. Like, I'm kind of like, but for me, it doesn't show my personality. It's the website. So I needed something there to show that I can teach about nutrition still, but in the easiest way possible. Like, I want to make it simple. Like, I want to make it simple for somebody.
And fun.
And fun. Yeah, because when somebody says, oh, we need to get into shape, we need to get into that, everybody's like, oh, okay. But it's not that at all. Like, it can be so fun. Learning, like, especially like reels, 30 seconds to fit everything in. Yes, that's hard for me to get into 30 seconds. But seeing people's reaction to it, being like, oh, like when we go into like vitamins, like the vitamin thing. If let's say I condense how to get vitamin like B, like B's of various, that's a long chain. Okay, vitamin A, if I can condense that into 30 seconds, and that helps improve someone's life, even if they don't come to me for advice, but they've seen that and be like, oh, I need this in my diet, I need this amount, and this is where I can get it from, but in a friendly, non kind of preachy way.
Yeah.
Then people are going to listen. They'll be like, oh, I'm going to take that. And I've seen such a great reaction from that. And it's been amazing, because people are like, oh, I didn't realize. So I did one about zinc the other day, and people don't realize things like zinc exist.
No, well, it's not calcium or iron. They're the only ones we talk about.
That's the thing. Like when you ever do learn anything, it's calcium, iron, omega, protein, carbs. They don't, and obviously they know vitamin, like maybe A, like C and D.
Vitamin C. Everybody knows vitamin C.
Yeah, but they never know about what's it called, E and K.
No.
Like I didn't know about E and K. I had no idea. It's like when you go into like minerals, people don't know, like, you need copper. People just think copper is what you get in the railways. It's insane that we just don't get taught these things. And I feel like even if I wasn't earning money from it, which I'm glad that I can.
Yes.
Like it's such a great, refreshing thing to know that I can help people and earn money. But even if I wasn't earning money from it, I'd still be doing it because it's fun. But for me, I'm teaching in the best way possible. Like, as much as I love to talk about the animal side of it, I don't think that works for a lot of people. You have to get the right kind of people on board with that. Like, animals will work for some, but everybody wants to be healthy.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be the healthiest possible. Whereas you can be like, oh, look, this for your milk, that carb has been taken away, and that milk is coming from a pregnant or was a pregnant cow that's had a baby taken away, and people are going to be like, oh no, that's fake, or oh no, I don't care, all that kind of stuff, and then it can turn people off. And as much as that's the reason that I did go, was for animals, before the health came into it, I feel like for other people, it's kind of like, if I can make them healthier, they're going to listen to me more. And before they know it, they started going on just a few whole meals, kind of like, let's say, for instance, like I normally make a chili, but I obviously take away the mint side of it, and I fill it with lentils. I have lentils, I have black beans, everything else. The premise of the chili is still the same. You just don't have the meat. Like, the flavor and the seasoning is still there. And once they're like, oh, there's not much difference to this. I'm like, I know, because it's very much the same taste. It's just you can substitute the meat with something else. So lentils is a great one. Once you substitute those, people will be like, oh, this is really enjoyable. I'm really full. I feel really good. And I'm like, yeah. And maybe try out this one and send them like, let's say a bolognese, which is something very close to home for them. Like, I'm not making it obscure, being like, I want to do something close to what you're looking, unless you really want to change your diet over to a completely different culture. Then kind of like even things like shepherd's pies, kind of like it's very close to home. It's what they know, but things have changed inside. But it's not that much of a big change that they won't really. Throughout the week, let's say it was a chili, a bolognese, it was a shepherd's pie, maybe it was like a stir fry or something like that. They've realized they've been eating whole foods for a week, and they might and they haven't missed the meat. Yes. Because they just seem to be feeding those nutrients. Yeah. And it's nice to see that people then have their mindset being like, I feel like I've been healthy, just like I did. I thought I felt healthy. I didn't. And people realize that once they've had all these vitamins and minerals inside them, and not just through a supplementation, that are kind of like, oh, I do feel good. And then it's that kind of and then it's them coming around to the thing that the whole premise of what they've been told has been a bit of a lie. Whole life, because it's very biased towards an industry which is overtaking the world, or has overtaken the world, is slowly coming down, which I'm glad to see, especially like when you look at like things like dairy industry. Because when I was younger, I remember being on a holiday in Scotland and telling my dad telling me that I need to drink milk to get my calcium.
Oh yes.
And me and my sister used to have a glass of milk a night, and most people don't realize that kale has more calcium per 100 grams to 100 mil, because they both work out near enough the same. What's it called? The mil to the gram. And kale has it's like 297 milligrams of calcium, whereas milk has 240. So what's the better choice here? It's kind of like, just eat the kale.
Plus fiber, plus fiber and all the phytonutrients.
Yeah, exactly. Like once that's the thing. Like, what you don't realize until you kind of start researching into this, that most people don't have enough fiber in their diet altogether. Like, I think it's something ridiculous that 85% of the world's population don't even get the 5% of it you're meant to be getting per day, let alone the whole amount. Like for me now, I'm just feeding myself that non-stop. My breakfast, my lunch, my dinner is just completely plants, to the point where it's like I might as well be living in one of those blue zones, because that's literally all. That's all that is. Like, apart from that, they're on a very Mediterranean diet. It's very much plant-based with the tiniest bit of like fish, but those fish also contain things like microplastics, which aren't good for your body.
Exactly.
So although they're living to that, I think you're going to see, especially now in people on whole foods, because that it's become there's a rise, that I feel like you're going to see a lot more people living to an older age, and then you're going to then start seeing the times change with people's lifestyles and mentalities being like, why is this person obviously living to a longer life than this person? And you can really put it down to diet, because people still don't I don't see why people can't put those things together about the blue zones and the Western diet. They're still not putting those things together. Those people live until like 110, and these people live until maybe 70, but can't work that out. But it's literally, it's right there in front of them. They don't eat what you're eating. But I still feel like now that Whole Foods is really, it should have taken off a long time ago, but it's taken off now. You're going to see a lot of people in the future then changing their mindset towards that. But at the moment, it's still very much a taboo word, I'd say. The word vegan, people are just like, oh, like, it could never be one of those, that they're annoying. I'm like, are we annoying, or are we just kind of telling you something but don't want to change?
Is it something like, isn't it something like 70% of chronic conditions are preventable through lifestyle?
Absolutely. There's I think the main three killers are preventable through lifestyle, aren't they? Like, number one's heart disease. The only way you get heart disease if you're eating meat. If that's not apart from coconut oil does have those bits inside it. Yeah, but apart from those things, apart from those, it's not hard to kind of work out why, like if you stop eating it, then you're not going to do that, and you could live potentially longer. That heart disease could lead to like a heart attack, a stroke, all these kind of things. I'm like, why would you not want to reduce those things? I don't want to get to like, let's say 60 and have a stroke. Like that's kind of like your life kind of going like that's then deterioration from down there. Some people come out of that absolutely fine, but some of them it's deterioration from there on. Why would I? And also, a lot of people are kind of like, oh, I'd sort my life out, and let's say when I'm in my 30s, I sort it out. Why not sort it out now?
Yeah.
Like, because then in your 30s, you can enjoy it more. Like, and that's really what it comes down to is people's mindsets. Like, I want to be the healthiest I can be, so I can live the healthiest life. People are like, you only live once. Yeah, I know I only live once, but I'd like to live it as long as I can, not
and as healthily as possible.
Yeah, it's just kind of like I don't want to cut it 20 years short when I could have 20 years longer. I'm not planning to, like, I know none of us come out of this alive, but at least while I'm here, I don't want to cause any pain to anybody or anything or any sentient being. At the same time, I want to look after my body. If you asked me like 10 years ago, I couldn't care less. But mindsets change, and I think that's gonna happen a lot. Like when people are gonna actually when these biased industry funded studies start running out of because there's a change in dynamic and the way people perceive things, that you're going to start seeing these things dwindle out, and the actual knowledge and the actual nutrition advice and the actual things coming out, and the benefits are actually going to start being seen. But until then, and just until you're not getting like biased information from people, even people like on TV, you get people like Piers Morgan, for instance, which will go out of his way to destroy like any kind of thought process along a vegan lifestyle for no benefit of his own, but just because he doesn't like them. And it's one of those things where once you get rid of those kind of biased industries, those biased people, and start showing the relevant information, then that's when you're going to start seeing such great things happening in the future.
Yeah, you've actually effectively answered the last question I was going to ask you, which was about how you see the future. And I've loved hearing your optimistic view of things, and I share it. I'm possibly not as optimistic as you, but I think I should be. You've persuaded me, so I do appreciate that.
Yeah, I think like the only way you can really is optimism, like because if I went when we all go plant-based or vegan, everybody's very angry at the world. We're all a bit angry because we've been told these things, and you just want to share it, and you just want to. And this is when we start to annoy people, because I know full well when I first switched over, I was like, have I been lied to this whole entire time? And evidently, yes, I had, and I was angry about that. I wanted to tell people, but it was kind of. I had that very negative attitude towards it, but after that, like, you know, a few months, I'm kind of like, you know, breathe. If I could do something like optimistic, if I can look forward to it in a better sense, if I can educate, then I feel like we can start making a difference altogether, especially with like a platform like yours as well. Like your platform is incredible for that kind of thing. Like it's a very evidence sourced platforms, which what people still argue against evidence, which still very much. And what does get me is people tell their opinion like it's fact and then believe it's fact where it's not. It's just once you look at evidence, you can't argue with science. Science 99% of the time is accurate, but your opinion's not. And so it's kind of, you just have to look at it in the best light possible, but like not everybody's going to change. Like I know in my lifetime that it's as much as I'd like it to, the world's not going to become whole foods, plant-based, vegan, whatever. It's not going to happen, but at least I can help move that movement. It's not even a movement, it's just become healthier. Like people are just like, oh, it's a movement. I was like, it's not a movement, it's just looking after yourself. It's just not hurting other beings, it's not hurting anybody else apart from yourself if you want to. In that case, like just be healthy, it's not a hard thing to do, and it's not an expensive thing to do either. It's not an expensive thing to look after yourself. When it's like many people will be going out and buying, let's say, coffee from like Starbucks every day, going out and getting a pizza, and what, that's like maybe £20, £25 a day. Yeah, they can't buy a pack of lentils. 50p. And it's kind of like, it's not an expensive thing to look after yourself. Even if you went for the most expensive, if you went to like a Waitrose and spent like thousands on your shopping, you're still your health shouldn't become a second priority.
That's right.
Yeah. It always needs to become first.
I think we're going to have to thank you very much for this interview. It's been superb. Have I asked enough questions? Have you asked enough questions?
No, I think it's...
He's answered the questions without us asking.
Absolutely, yeah. Your belief...
I just realised I was just rambling on, but...
No, that's exactly what we were looking for.
Your belief in and passion for whole food, plant-based nutrition is so... I was going to say infectious. Maybe that's the wrong word to use at the moment. Contagious, whatever. It's been great, and particularly, you know, as we hopefully emerge from the last 16 months, where people's consciousness of living a more healthy lifestyle has been accelerated. People will begin to change and turn towards this kind of way of eating. I really hope so, and to have people like you out there that are doing your best to get the message out there is so reassuring. So I think we'd just like to thank you for this interview. It's great, yeah. And we hope that people will get the chance to see it and listen to it.
And they must go to your Instagram page. I shall insist.
So we'll...
Thank you.
So okay. Thank you very much for that, Callum. It's been great. Thank you.
It was an absolute pleasure.